Hi, welcome to Metaverse Brands. I'm your host, Stephen DiPianco. Today, we're welcoming Rhiannon Apple from Super League Gaming. In this episode, we talk about how Super League helps brands enter the metaverse on platforms like Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft. We go deep into how brands can advertise via media units like billboards and NPCs, integrate into existing games like Barbie did with her dream house, and building full experiences like MTV did for their VMAs. But first, just want to thank everybody who's listened and shared their feedback about the show. It's been so cool to talk to people who either I know or don't know who have been listening, and I just really appreciate it. If you do like this episode and you're enjoying the shows, please be sure to rate it and review it. It helps us out a lot. And if you want to keep up with new episodes, be sure to subscribe and sign up for my Metaverse newsletter at my website, metaversemarcom.io. All right, let's jump into my conversation with Rhiannon. All right, welcome to Rhiannon Apple. Excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. I'm excited to dig into this conversation, to learn more about you and what you're doing over at Super League Gaming. So let's start there. Just tell us, please, sort of where do you work, what do you do there, and sort of how did you end up there?
Yeah. So I work at Super League Gaming, and my title is VP of Integrated Marketing. I actually have spent my career working in innovative spaces. So, back in the day before Facebook and Pinterest and all the different social networks were the official big social networks, I was running an innovation team for an ad agency. And then I hopped on over to Full Screen, which was an influencer marketing agency, and had the opportunity to come over to Super League with some old colleagues, former colleagues of mine. And this space really intrigued me because, all along the way, I've worked with brands going into new spaces, and there's a lot of education that has to happen. And Super League looks at the metaverse in a consultative manner. We wouldn't say that this is the space everybody should be in, or this is the one platform everyone should be in. We understand the nuances of the different places you can play on. And so we're able to work with brands and talk with brands about here's what's happening. Here's how, one particular experience may fit your brand. And being able to do that and learn about a new space is what intrigued me to come over to Super League. So that's what I do. I help our brands that come in. We put together programs using all our different products.
And so, it's really interesting that it's a new space, but you've been in innovation for a long time, and so you've ridden the waves and seen how things have changed and helped brands along the way. Just from those who've never heard of Super League Gaming,
Mm-hmm.
what is the pitch? What does Super League Gaming do? And specifically, how does it work with brands?
Yeah. So Super League, if you want to think about it, we like to say that we're the rocket ship to the metaverse, right? We've been working in the gaming space for over a decade, and we've been in these experiences building them for ourselves. So we have owned and operated gaming experiences on Minecraft and on Roblox, and we're looking at other platforms as well. And because that's one side of our business, we're able to take that expertise and apply it to our brand side of the business. So on the brand side of the business, we also have an advertising network, and our ad technologies are able to be applied on Roblox and Minecraft, which are, two experience worlds in the metaverse, not, the metaverse.
Sure.
So,
And so, taking that expertise in gaming, all of that experience, and then applying it, helping it to brands who are entering the space, and with that ad technology, with that ad network. And so I know, and I've had the fortune to be able to work with Super League Gaming myself with Hot Topic, and yeah, I think there's even more to it, So
yep.
to me, just like if you could share a little bit more about like what are some examples of the types of things that like a brand that comes to Super League Gaming, right? And they say, let's say, hey, we don't know anything right? And we wanna get into the metaverse. Just walk me through what those conversations look like from the very beginning when, like you said, there might be a lot of education required, but what are those steps in sort of getting a brand onboarded?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we talk about. First and foremost is who are you trying to reach, right? So right now, you'll hear a lot of buzzwords. Gen Z, Gen Alpha are big audiences in the metaverse. But there's nuances, right? So depending on who the brand wants to reach, one particular experience may be better than the other. We lately have really been focused on Gen Z, and specifically on Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite. Because when you look at just general trends for the Gen Z audience, those are the top three franchises being played on the gaming side. And so that's really where we can say, okay, we know these audiences are there, and now we can talk about what they're doing there. The second thing then we ask a brand is, well, what are you trying to do with this audience? Are you wanting to fully engage with them on a regular, ongoing basis, which means that may be an integration into an existing game, or that may be a completely new experience being built. But with that comes a whole nother layer of conversations. Or are you just wanting to tap into it for a campaign, short term? And if it's a short term campaign, then we can talk about some of the advertising or media capabilities that we have. And so those are kind of the two things we start with.
Gotcha. And then just curious, so even actually rewinding a little bit before that, what do you think brings the brands to you? What is it like, oh, my boss said I have to go figure this out? Is it like, oh, I've been reading all this stuff and, heard about you? Yeah, just like,
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, to be honest.
hmm,
So we do have some that come and say, my CMO has heard that the space is a space we need to be in, or our competitors are in the space. We want to learn more about what's happening. But quite honestly, you know, brands and agencies are smart and know that um, attention for audience is segmented. And
yeah,
especially when you're reaching a sub 18 or even sub 24 audience, the traditional digital methods aren't working. So making sure that you're in places where these folks already are at, and that you're doing it in an authentic way, is really why they're coming. I've seen a lot of very similar requests. We know Gen Z is here. We want to reach them authentically. How can we do that? We've heard Fortnite is a great place, or we've heard Roblox is a great place. How do we tap into these audiences?
gotcha. Yeah, and you mentioned having worked in sort of in the agency world, and so just how do you think about that fragmented landscape today? Do you think that these platforms, the Fortnites, the Roblox, the Minecrafts, are because they've been around, right? Like they're they're
Right.
they're not new. So I guess like what why is it different now than it was before? Like is it like, oh, are they just bigger than they were before? Are like how has the market changed?
I think a couple things have changed. One, tracking. I sh- uh, I should say reporting and
Hmm.
analytics has changed a bit,
Okay.
right? So in-game advertising has been around, right? And for a long time. Previously, it was there. You had to work with the game publisher. You had to wait long lead time because of the way the game was developed. Now with these platforms, especially Roblox and the pandemic, honestly, I think COVID really changed the way that marketers thought, and also the way that audiences interact with each other. And so with that, with Roblox exploding, as well as being an open platform, and allowing folks like us in Superbiz to go onto their platform and create an analytics tracking system for developers to understand their audiences so that they can make a better game. And then for us to have a media product that does the in-game advertising that's been around, but now we can do it in a faster, more efficient way. And so I think the perfect storm of some of these things have come together. that have really made it interesting to brands and agencies.
Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely, like I have kids. They played a bunch of Roblox during sort of the height of the pandemic, the way that they could interact with their friends, play games with them and talk to them and hang out like in a virtual
Yep.
space. Like that was a huge shift in not only my kids' behavior, but certainly all over the world. And then I like what you're saying in terms of tying together like, oh, the fact that a platform like Roblox is an open platform that anyone can build there, and you're not only able to build whatever experiences but you want as a game developer, but then like the technology that was built on the advertising side that's falls within the terms of service, and like
Yep.
just really reducing that friction to and like you're saying in speed, increasing the speed to go to market. And so yeah, that's such a huge shift from even just a few years ago that makes this more interesting. And it has nothing to do with even like the hype around the metaverse, right? Like those things are not around the hype of the metaverse. It's just like practical changes in consumer behavior and like the technology and the platforms that exist now that weren't at scale a few years ago.
Exactly. And I think, I do think the hype around the word metaverse has gotten people intrigued. And what I like about the platforms I just spoke about is those are actionable today. A brand could come today, and scalable too. A brand could come today and say, I want to start working in an integrated way with an experience, right? Not just an advertisement, or I want to have something that can be scaled to millions and millions of people. And these three platforms have that. I think sometimes when you talk about NFTs and some of the other parts of the metaverse that are truly important, but they're still so new that the scale may not be there, or the audiences may not be there yet. Like traditional ad dollars and traditional advertising.
Yeah, for sure. These platforms, the Roblox, Fortnite, etc., Minecraft, have a ton of scale. Whereas if you look at Sandbox and Decentraland and Horizon Worlds, like you're
Mhm.
just like a drop in the bucket in terms of their active user base.
And that's not to say that they're not important,
Mm,
right? They have their time and their place for the right brand or for the right audience. It's just they're different. And that's why we say at Super League, what is it you're trying to accomplish, and which one of these platforms makes the most sense?
gotcha. And so you mentioned first question is like, hey, who are you trying to reach? So second question was, what are you trying to do? So can you walk through some examples of what brands might say when you ask them what are they trying to do, and then what would be the recommendations based on, those objectives?
Yep. So, we've learned quite a bit with brands and agencies to really dig in on understanding one, their creative process, two, their appetite for creative control. Because those two things, honestly, oh, and three, their legal process, right?
Sure.
Um, which that's always the thing when we're
Yeah,
talking about brands. Legal is always the
absolutely.
thing. But understanding those in the upfront really helps guide us as well. Because something we've been tossing around internally is, in influencer marketing, when it first came out, brands wanted to use influencers the way that you would make like a TV commercial. Hey, I see you're creative. I need you to say these talking points. I need you to do it exactly like this.
Right.
Um, and then what happened is everybody got frustrated in the process,
Hmm.
right? Because the creator was making content their audiences didn't like. They are not, brand folks. So a lot of what was being asked of them was beyond what they do for a living. And not saying that they can't, just that's not how they made their content.
Right.
And then on the brand side, things weren't performing the way they thought. And so over the years, brands have learned, hey, let's let these creators make the best content for them. We'll give them a few talking points we'd like them to get in there, but really, let's let the creators do it. So internally, what we've been saying is this world is no different.
Hmm.
There's big developers or creators on our platforms. And we at Super League, part of our business side is supporting those creators. Um, and they know what their audience is like. They know how their audiences want to play games. And so part of that conversation is about creative control. Are you a brand that is okay giving up some creative control so that this experience can truly be the best for this audience? And if there's hesitancy in there, then we're like, okay, you want to try the space? Let's start with media then. Because media, you can own that, right? And that's put in an experience in a way that's not obtrusive, but it's fully owned by the brand.
Yeah, and that media, like you're talking about virtual billboards, if you could just dive
Oh
in a little
yeah, yeah.
deeper into what that media, what those units would be.
So we have some really interesting ones. In-game billboards. That's a pretty standard unit across most game types, right? But in Roblox and in Minecraft, we've got these 3D billboards. We have some new ones though that are really cool, and they're NPCs, so non-playing characters. So you can make a little person. A great example is for the movie Bad Guys when it came out. We had the four main characters created in Roblox, and they were dropped in different Roblox games. And so the reason it's a media unit is because those developers can take our SDK and just take that whole package, drop it right into their game where they always have their advertising with us. And so it's not affecting the game per se, which is great. So the Bad Guys example was really cool because it was new IP, at least for movies. The book's been out. But players in Roblox could walk up and talk to these characters and ask them questions. And at the end of it, there was a prompt saying in theaters, I can't remember when it came out, but in theaters now,
Right.
Go watch Bad Guys.
Right.
So it's really neat. Those media units can be more interactive than, let's say, a display on web, which is really cool.
Right, right. And it's almost like a cameo. It's like a cameo
It is.
of this character in your game, and
It
as a
is.
player running into somebody, you might have seen a commercial or something, and so yeah, such an interesting way to be able to, as a brand, to get your message out, get your IP out, spread the word within these experiences, within these games.
Yeah, and we've what's really cool is we've actually taken that same ad unit and converted it to now be a brand lift study for us. So we're able to ask questions in partnership with Nielsen about whether or not a player has any awareness of the brand. We've used them in partnership with integrations. So if a brand does decide they want to do a full integration into an existing game, we can run those 3D characters and ask those questions of players. And we've actually seen positive lift across a few campaigns, which is really great.
And what are those questions that are being asked, like before and afterwards?
Yep. So we have a control group and exposed group. So before it's, are you aware of a certain, the brand and then 3 competitors? Would you consider purchasing them? Would you consider going, to see it, depending on the category? And then that's the control. And then after, we run a similar set of questions, but again, asking, which brand would you recommend? Which brand would you, purchase, depending again on the brand itself. And in the toy category, in 2 instances from an integration, we actually saw positive in real life recommendations. So after being exposed to those integrations, the lift was in some cases over 100%
Oh wow.
of driving recommendation and consideration.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you mentioned different sort of media units. You mentioned the ability to do surveys and be able to, with the help of Nielsen and or validation by Nielsen, to be able to measure brand lift. What are some of these other ways that you help brands enter these spaces?
Yeah. So the sort of last 2 in that spectrum. So we like to say there's lower cost, lower lift,
Mm-hmm.
which those are the media ones,
Okay.
all the way up to like the higher cost, higher lift. And so like the next level would be an integrated experience. And the benefit for a brand of integrating into is existing experience is that there's already an audience there. So you're tapping into a world. The trade-off with that is that creative control piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you have to truly partner with this creator and understand this world that the creators made and how your brand can be brought in. And so those can be across a spectrum of different game types. Minecraft has different servers where you could integrate into. Roblox, there's millions of them. And then Fortnite with Creative Islands, there's huge creators there. And what's really cool is you can be integrating into this existing experience that can be anywhere from a 2-minute average playtime up to like Fortnite, where there's hour long average playtime. And what we do is we help, again, who's your audience? Okay, if it's an older Gen Z, maybe Fortnite's the right space for you, right? If it's a younger Gen Z and you really want to do a role-playing game, well, maybe Roblox is the place we want to be in. And then we identify that. Typical lead time for like an integration can be a little shorter than a custom experience, because again, you're not building a game from scratch. You're not having to worry about the upfront marketing to get the audience there. So, to do an integration, it could be 8 weeks from start to finish to go ahead and get in there. And then the last way that we talk to brands about being in this space is that custom experience. So are you a brand that has a strong enough IP to really make a splash? One. And then two, do you have the team and or time to dedicate to this and make sure that once it's there, you have an always on marketing plan and program? And that's really where, I said earlier, at Super League, we have our owned and operated platforms, and we have services that we combine to make sure that we're driving players to these spaces. So we have our influencer team that we can reach out to influencers, because we know that players aren't just playing in these spaces, they're also watching content about it. So in a custom experience, we could talk about that with you. We could also talk about tournaments to drive awareness of this, because again, in the spaces we were just talking about, this is gameplay and you can do tournament play in them, right? So those are the last two ways that we work with brands. Much more time and conversation goes into it when you talk custom experience. 12-week minimum lead time. Ideally, 16-week would be so great.
Mm-hmm. But bigger lift and
bigger lift.
Yeah, more commitment, more resources. Just to go back a step to the integrations, you mentioned that again, there's that kind of creativity, the creative process involved. You mentioned earlier before that about like characters, non-playable characters as media units. So how would an integration work? Like what does that look like if you're a brand? How do you I understand billboards and I understand non-playable characters, but what could an integration look like? What would the nuts and bolts be?
Yeah, I think I can openly share the Mattel programs that we did. Mattel wanted to do an integration for both Barbie and Polly Pocket and test out the Roblox space. And so we helped them partner with Lifetopia, which is one of the top role-playing games or town and city games on Roblox. And Barbie, for example, it was Barbie's 60th anniversary for the Dream House.
Mm-hmm.
And what better way to show off the dream house virtually than actually build the dream house virtually? And so in Lifetopia, an example is that house, the Barbie dream house, was built in Lifetopia so that players of Lifetopia could go in and explore the space. The other way that we integrated was we had NPCs, those non-playing characters, of actual Barbies created. And they were on different places within the floor, so that when you walked up, you could talk to that different Barbie. So we had Pasta Chef Barbie in the kitchen, and she could prompt you and say, hey, you can go cook in the kitchen right now. And then you could go and cook in the kitchen. And then the last way we also integrated the brand is that we know that players, one of the top things players love in these spaces is to customize their avatar and get things for their avatar. So in this instance, Barbie had 5 hidden items that if players found them in the Barbie dream house, they got to keep them in their inventory. And so we had Barbie skates and a Barbie snowboard and Barbie shirt and a Barbie pin. And the reason we did all of those things is because the goal of game playing is to spend time playing games, right? And so knowing that you mix a couple of different things, so having a house to explore, which is the exploration side,
Hmm.
having hidden items, which is the search and find and customizing their things, and then having the NPCs, which again, players are used to going and talking to, all give different touch points for the brand to talk with the player and spend time with them.
Gotcha. And so that was like what I believe it was a month long
It
campaign.
ran for a month. Yes, yes.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And so that seems like, as you're saying, like us, there's a lot there in terms of, oh, what are the items? What is the experience? What
Yep.
sounds like there were little games, mini games for players to play and then to unlock these items. So there's all of that. And then a full on experience is like that times how much? Like a lot more?
A lot more because a great example that we did for a custom activation was MTV wanted to bring the VMAs into the metaverse, right? And what better way than to build one? So we helped them build a custom world in Roblox. And what was great about that is players could go and vote for the best metaverse experience. So that actually connected to the real awards show. But in creating that, we had to make sure we were building an entire world, right? Players couldn't just come to an empty space.
Right.
So we had a creative team working in partnership with MTV to develop this space world is essentially what it was. And in there, we knew this was going to be a short-term activation. So it was only going to be live for 3 weeks, which is good because that means, we could be a little more limited on how expansive the world is.
Yeah.
But knowing that, we also wanted to make sure that people had things to do once they came there. So we created 3 different mini games on top of the voting mechanism for them. And that came through a partnership of us and the development team. And then, of course, MTV. So when you go custom, those are the things, we can help you along the way, but you have to take into consideration that you're not just building the world, but then you have to have activities for them to do and things to do once they're there.
Gotcha. No, this has been great to go through and understand the variety of ways that Super League is helping brands enter the metaverse. Just to sort of wrap this up in terms of both, maybe if you were talking to brands, maybe brands who are listening to this podcast, what would be the sort of maybe advice to brands, and then also maybe like things that brands might not realize before they get started? So both of those things, advice and then things just to be aware of that they might not know.
I think the first thing is that this is still a new space when it comes to advertising and or marketing. And what I mean by that is brands are typically looking for certain metrics and certain benchmarks of how is this going to perform? What is this going to do if I spend X, right? Companies like us at Super League, we can provide insights because we have worked with enough brands now. We can provide some guidance, but it's still fairly new in what can be tracked. We are still talking also about platforms that have to be COPPA compliant. So there is a bit of limitation there, but not that shouldn't stop brands from wanting to be there. It's just, be aware that when you're going into the space, it's still new. It's still a trial and learn area. And right now is the time to go in and learn those different insights and different ways that you can engage with these audiences. So I would say one is, just have an open mind and know that this is a test and learn time. But that said, there are companies like us that have been doing it enough to provide some of those overarching insights that we've seen and direction, so that you're not going in blindly and it's not a scary space, that you truly can go in and do some really great things, especially with, like we were saying, the 3D characters and brand lift studies. You can tie it back to some of the traditional advertising. So yeah, that's what I would say.
All right. Well, just to switch gears and wrap things up, I have a couple last questions for you, a kind of fun speed round here. What is your favorite metaverse platform and why?
Ooh, good question. You know what? I honestly have to say Roblox. And it's because there is just so much to do on that platform. And I feel like it's a great space that isn't scary for adults to play, in that you can figure it out pretty quickly because it's mobile friendly. So yeah, I think Roblox is mine right now.
Cool. And then do you have a favorite either metaverse game or video game that you enjoy playing?
Okay, well, if it's video games, I'm an old school video game player. And I love seeing my kids play older games. So old school would be just straight up Super Mario Brothers. I know that's lame. But metaverse games, I'm trying to think of one that I really get into. The ones that I found really fun. Have you ever played Murder Mystery 2? Again, Roblox. Sorry, I'm going right into that.
I haven't played it.
All right. Well, it's a fun game. It's you gotta survive the killer. It sounds more dramatic than it is. Nobody's really like dying or anything. But those games are really fun, and it's a different genre than I would have ever expected. One day, I think I'll get into the VR side, but right now I'm not there yet.
Gotcha. And then if you could have anyone or anything as your avatar, what would it be?
Ooh, anyone or anything. I think I would be a tree avatar if I could.
A specific tree?
Yes, I have this.
Okay.
A Japanese maple in fall. So the ones that are like orangey red.
Wow.
And I was thinking about that because today I'm down in Atlanta, so we still have leaves on our trees here. And those are the ones that always still have them the longest. And the color is just so shocking and vibrant. And I think a tree avatar would be so fun in these games because you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. How can people, who are interested in learning more, either follow you or get in touch or learn about Super League Gaming?
Yeah, we have a pretty active LinkedIn profile, so can always reach out to Super League on LinkedIn. Myself as well. I think my name's a little more challenging to spell, so Super League might be a little better.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right, that was an awesome conversation. To me, the key takeaway is that if you're looking to reach young audiences like Gen Z, you really need to pay attention to platforms like Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, because that's just a great way to reach those Gen Z audiences now. And also another takeaway is that depending on what your objectives are as a brand, there are different ways to reach that audience, whether it's on the low end in terms of lift, media buying, or sort of on the heavier end of lift, full integration or building a full experience. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks so much. If you're interested in finding out more about me and what I'm up to, you can follow me, Steven DiPianco, on LinkedIn. You can also follow my company, Metaverse Marcom, on LinkedIn as well. Our website is metaversemarcom.io. We help entertainment and sports brands enter the metaverse with strategy, innovation, and marketing consulting services. We also put out a weekly metaverse newsletter that has all sorts of good stuff. So if you're interested in that, check it out. Also, please be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and rate this episode. All right, I'll see you in the metaverse.